I hadn't done what the Beatles did, which was do a gig somewhere where you play for 5 hours in a night and really learn to sing with no monitors or anything, to learn how not to lose your voice. I didn't do any of that, so suddenly I had a record deal, a crack band behind me, and you know, really hot band, and I'm playing in front of a critical audience, and I'm in Rolling Stone magazine, and I don't know how to sing, you know. So, but you know, I'd go on stage and I couldn't talk sometimes. I couldn't talk. I'd be like, I can't talk like my voice. And I'd go on stage and I'd scream like a... Why I haven't had throat operations and stuff, I don't know. I've got away with it. A lot of people get the nodes. Yeah. Somehow I've got away with it. And I've thoroughly abused my vocal cords. It's only now that I've learned how to use melody and to sing under the notes when you go on stage, and to do different techniques. I didn't have any lessons, I just figured it out. But that's pretty much the history of my singing for you. Yes, guy at the back first.
Way back.
Yeah. Actually, I had two questions. One, Eric, you wrote a press release, I think it was for your album Burning Questions, where you wrote a paragraph about each of the albums that you had made before that, which was absolutely freaking hilarious. And unfortunately, I lost that when my basement flooded. But have you ever considered writing a book about your career? Because it sounds like you've got a million stories. Yeah. A lot of them.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, I guess you know, maybe that's down the line. I don't know. What I did in my short stories, and especially the novel The Other Life of Brian, was take bits of my life and blow them up out of all proportion, which is what fiction is. You know, it's you take a grain of reality and blow it up out of all proportion, which is what songwriting is often. You know, I mean, you'll get a person who's rich and famous, and they're writing about how awful everything is. It's, you know, it's fiction. You know, it's blown up out of proportion. I'm sorry, you know, and so. I took, you know, I wrote a story in Cartridging on Valium called Me and the Stones, and it's about, you know, Brian Porker as the narrator, and he's a musician in that story, and Mick Jagger dies. He gets run over by a bus, and Keith decides, oh, you know, man, well, you know, the Stones must roll on, man. So I'm looking for a replacement for Mick. You know, and so, you know, Brian, you know, he calls Brian, gets hold of Brian Porker. Brian, I think you'd be great for this, man, because, you know, you do the R&B stuff, and you've always said you're a big fan of ours, so, you know, I want you to try out as the singer, man. You know? And so Brian gets a shot at being the singer in the new Rolling Stones. It doesn't work for him, it doesn't happen, you know, Keith gives up in the end, but so I use so much of my knowledge of what it is like to be in a rehearsal room with a bunch of musicians, even the Stones, you know, who are probably terrible, you know, from all accounts they're pretty awful, you know, rehearsing, and it's like, you know, everyone turns up 3 hours late and they're eating Chinese food and nothing's getting done. And then Charlie starts playing, it's all out of time. And Bill Wyman's left and they got a slick bass player who's really too slick for the rest of the band. You know, it's like, I know what it's like. You know, the Stones have got to be awful, you know, rehearsing, you know. And then it clicks and it's like absolute genius, you know. But, you know, so I use my experience in a fictional form, and I prefer to hide behind that, you know, than to do the real thing. So, you know, but maybe that's down the line. I wouldn't put it out, you know. But it seems indulgent to me to say, me, myself, I personally, this is my life, man. It seems, you know, a little self-important somehow. So that's why I preferred the fictional approach to doing bits of it, you know. But we'll see.
I was also curious about not only for quite a while you worked with Rumor, and then since then you haven't really had like a standing band that you work with. How has that changed the way you work? Does that change the way you write songs at all? I mean, would you write songs thinking this is something that the Rumor would play really well, and since then, you know, you don't think about what the other companies are going to do as much?
Well, no, with the Rumor, I never did. I never thought about I'm writing something that'll suit them. I just wrote songs, so I didn't really think about it that way. Now, because I use different musicians and different configurations of musicians, when I'm writing, I sometimes think, who will be the right people, you know, because the band, the Figs, I've used them as a backing band on one album only, and used them on stage a lot, and I've used various members sometimes of the Figs. And so I do sometimes think, as I write, I'm starting to think of what band would be good, what instrumentation, and should I play all the guitar and the bass, should I do that, you know. So there is a little bit of that goes into it nowadays, you know. But it's kind of peripheral to the whole thing, really, you know. If it's a good song, it's a good song, you know, and then I'll take it from there, you know. Okay, I think someone has something. One of these guys.
You're squeezing out sparks. Is that a metaphor for something?
No, well, I think it comes from the abortion song, doesn't it? It's in You Can't Be Too Strong, so everybody else is squeezing out a spark. Once I wrote that line, I thought, that's a good song title. That's it, you know.
That's it. There's nothing, you know.
Nothing more to it, yeah.
Okay.
It was just a good, catchy line, you know.
Because we've got all sorts of... What does that line really mean?
Just listen to the song, and I guess it means death, really, you know. Ouch, you know. That's a great thing that someone had. Next, yeah, let's go to the other one. Did you have one? No.
Yes. Somebody behind me.
You. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. If you kind of read about Graham Parker in the press and the critics and all that kind of stuff, it sounds like there once was Graham Parker who was angry and bitter and hated the world, and then made these great albums, and then he got married and he had a kid and went soft. And I was wondering, first of all, is that really the case? Were you really angry and then you found contentment? And the other thing was that, I mean, I think some of, you know, after that point, Kid with the Butterfly Net, you know, a lot of these things I thought were just outstanding and brilliant. And I'm wondering how your frame of mind, if you're happy in life, do you find it difficult to write, or you know, there's that whole tortured artist kind of...
Right, yeah. Well, I don't really think I was a tortured artist when I started. There was a lot of anger and angst in the songs, and I'm not quite sure why. I think, you know, it's a good driving force when you're starting, definitely, because there wasn't a lot of that around in music in 1975, for one thing. So I felt that it was kind of unique to inject that into music, even though, of course, it'd been done before over the years. And so it was a good tool for me to use, and you know, it was very much an age thing. It's much more to do with age thing. When you're younger, you definitely feel much more pissed off at the world, and that you know a lot that other people don't, in a naive kind of sense. So it was definitely handy for me. But you know, if you go into, say, an album like Songs of No Consequence, which is one I did with the Figs, there are songs there that have a bit of, you know, angst to them. It's still there, but it's not my favourite thing. My favourite songs are ballads. You know, also influential to me, as I say, was like Sweet Baby James by James Taylor, you know, and I'd like to write songs like that. So, and songs like Kid with the Butterfly Net. These are the songs I think are the most important to me. The sweeter songs, the real love songs. Like one on Don't Tell Columbus called All Being Well, you know. It's the emotional songs and probably I'm more fond of them now than I used to be. But there again in my early music, you see, people overplay this dramatically. If you listen to the first album, there's a song called Between You and Me on there, which could have been right next to Kid with the Butterfly Net. There's a song called Gypsy Blood. It's the most maudlin song I've ever written. It's literally maudlin. It really is. It's sugary. It's not good. I don't like it. It's a beautiful melody. It's very pretty. But everyone says, you were so angry. I said, well, wait a minute. Go back to the first album and listen to that and realize the scope of my songwriting was not what you think it was, you know. So all that stuff is a bit pigeonholed, you know, really. Yeah. Oh, someone over there who hasn't turned.
Do you have any recollections of ever playing like the same clubs or ever getting to meet like any of the other songwriters that were kind of at that time, like Christine Hall?
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear all of the question.
Do you have any personal reminiscences